we just generally ask that, like, is it a leftist film? That's not like makes it good or bad. Just like we're just taking the temperature of the film.
Is it an explicitly leftist film? This is explicitly leftist podcast.
It's a question we're going to ask.
There is no left Hollywood. There's liberal Hollywood, and the right likes to conflate these things.
What a glorious time.
You mean peak COVID?
All right, well, when you put it that way.
What a glorious, lots of free time to watch movies and record time, for sure. We're already up to speed. We know what's going on here. We're just waiting for him to get in there and strangle him with his dick again. So let's get to that scene.
Let's do this.
I don't know what his politics were at this point. I mean, I know he sort of gets all Maoist-y when everybody gets Maoist-y, but I mean, who didn't? Okay. Oh, the 58 coup. Okay, yeah. Sorry. That's not CIA. This is a werewolf episode, God damn it.
Just not the one you were hoping for.
Yeah, and when that happens, when the werewolf comes out, you're like, God damn, all right, this movie's awesome.
Victor Ostrovsky, the screenwriter on that, former Mossad agent.
Oh, wow.
Not sure what needs to be unpacked there, but...
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of fuckery here. How many people have you tortured?
Well, that doesn't really change how fucked the system is. We don't have time for baby steps right now.
Because when I watch a Godard movie, I kind of like, this is very smart. I'm very impressed with your form. I want to slap you. You feel so fucking smug.
Well, do you think this is a leftist film?
No, not at all. We're going to have to atone for this movie. Lead a open rebellion, then the camp gets napalmed, and then revolution, I guess?
Fuck capitalism. Fuck all of this stuff.
Oh, partigiano. Portami via, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, 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 partigiano, portami via, che mi sento di morir, e se io muoio da partigiano, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, 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 e se io muoio da partigiano, tu mi devi seppellire.
Welcome all to the Politics of Cinema. On this show, we believe films are never neutral. There's a political as well as an artistic message captured in every film, in every country, and in every time period. And we are on the lookout for all of it. Some of it subtle, some of it not so much. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Isaac Miller. And on this episode, we're doing, I believe, the last of our authoritarianism in film episodes. And we're closing it out with the big one, maybe the biggest of them all. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Charlie Chaplin's 1940, The Great Dictator.
I feel like the end of this series has to have an asterisk next to that statement because it's also just sort of the mission statement of the show in a way. So I don't think this is the last of the authoritarian on film movies we'll be covering, but in a dedicated series perspective, yes.
Yes, from a dedicated series perspective. And since we are living in nascent authoritarianism and we don't really know how long we'll be able to do any of these things, probably, cram it in.
That's true.
Create a little more evidence for, our future secret police overlords.
I mean, we could just shift into doing right-wing movies.
I don't think that'll help our case.
No. And I previewed a bunch of those over the years to see should we be doing this? Because they're just hilarious sometimes, but I don't know.
Well, the problem is just and it's not that we don't do movies that are bad on occasion or that we're split over.
Right.
But it is true. It's are we going to spend all our time on a real piece of shit? Right.
I mean, this place that we've carved out, I would say maybe when we did Invasion USA with Chuck Norris, some of the stuff that's actually this has some entertainment value and there is a certain B movie kind of style to it. And maybe it's clumsily saying something or discovering what maybe clumsily it doesn't know it's saying versus I don't want to watch the films of Dinesh D'Souza and talk about them here.
Well, that's the thing is Rambo or, that post-Vietnam action movie space. These are not all going to be entertaining because some of them are just, some of the Chuck Norris movies are pretty fucking boring, but this is actually, it's entertainment. These were movies that were made entertainments first. They weren't made first as political films in a sense.
Right.
And the political politics is because, evil, Reaganism, what have you. And, the atmosphere, what sells and the people who made it, obviously, Red Scorpion, definitely.
Oh yeah. Oh God. Yeah. That was a convoluted mess.
But, it's it's a propaganda film for apartheid South Africa. But, nonetheless, they're made more for entertainment, whereas, the problem with like dedicated right-wing movies at this point
Hmm.
is they're not made for entertainment value, and so they're boring.
Right, right. Like I've watched a couple that Ben Shapiro's group have financed. I'm just like, it's one and done, and I'm usually mad I wasted 90 minutes in the first place. I don't want to have to do research. I don't want to think about it that much. I don't want to talk about it because also they're not really making a splash in the film zeitgeist either, I guess.
No, I mean they're in their political space, which might mean they're like reach vastly more people than we would realize. But I mean, this is part. I mean, we can sort of talk about. I mean, the politics of Hollywood at this point. Well, the politics of Hollywood. I mean, part of it is it's just like the market. Jesus Christ. But like, I mean, there is a, there's a sort of a question of the degree to which American film
Hmm.
effectively expresses the politics of its moment. Which I'm not saying that film always, American film specifically, always express the politics of its moment. I mean, it's always mediated through the market and the industry.
Sure. And the time it takes to make a movie in general and all that.
But I think part of it is with the limited ambit for genres at this point to make it, it doesn't actually express in the way that it used to.
Yeah.
So like the fact that like 80s and 90s action movies are so fucking reactionary
Right.
expressed something of that moment.
Yes.
And I think that the late great dominance of Marvel also expressed something of that moment. Some of those movies had a political tilt to them or things that you could pull out, but also the fact that they were dominant said something.
Hmm.
And now, right now, it's like, I mean, part of it is it says actually, it does say something of the moment that like it seems like everybody's just confused about what's going to make it.
True. And actually, I feel like this conversation is going to be explored far more in depth once we get into our January, February, March programming because there's some spectacular political cinema coming out of the American film landscape, if not straight up from Hollywood at the
Right.
current moment. So
That is true, and that was
to
a
be continued in a couple episodes.
that was a preview. Let's talk
Yeah.
about something that's not quite as current and yet.
Wildly current at the same time. The Great Dictator. Man, where do you start with freaking Chaplin, man? Some Chaplin biography first, or
Yeah, let's
I guess.
let's explain who this person. I think it's important to understand who Chaplin is to understand what The Great Dictator is as a movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cartoonishly Dickensian upbringing in that he's in like, a workhouse for children because, dad's not around, mom's mentally unstable. Like it's just it's as absolutely destitute and literal like rags to riches story as you can possibly imagine. Like if you wrote this into a novel, you'd be like, wow, that's pretty unrealistic from from literally like the workhouses as a child to performing on stages and whatever just to like get attention and maybe a little bit of money, getting by any way he can to be the highest paid, most recognizable entertainer in the world in the silent film era is bonkers.
Yeah, no, I mean he is that rags to riches, but that background is essential to why I feel like is essential to why he makes it because the character of the tramp that he creates in the silent era, I don't think he would have been able to create it without that experience.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's something we were talking before we were recording about how Chaplin has like the comedy, but also the drama and the pathos within his stories, the way that other silent comedians didn't necessarily have, and that translates to the world in general as silent films were, especially as silent comedies were exported outwards to other countries in the 20s and early 30s, like the impulse to like root for the underdog, which is the tramp, and having a recognizable character in almost all of his movies that people could go and cheer for or enjoy the way that you didn't have with like dramas or thrillers or anything or westerns necessarily.
Yeah. No, well, yeah. I mean, so he creates this character. There's a basic pathos and humanism to everything that he does that connects at a very sort of deep and non-cynical level while he's able to do the comedy. I don't want to say that he's a unique figure because somebody could probably point to others, but he does feel like a unique figure, right? Like just
Yeah, for sure.
period in what he's able to accomplish in terms of the range of story. I mean, when I watch his movies from the 30s, right? So once talkies come in, no one else gets to do what he does, which is no one else gets to meld the aesthetics and style, including in this movie, of silent and non-silent, because he's at that level, right? He can stand against the prevailing style of filmmaking and still have what the number 2 movie of the year because he's a unique star.
Oh, with a great dictator. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And unique star in so many aspects of that word, the least of which would be financially able to be independent and do whatever he wants.
Right. He's so big.
Right. Like, I mean, he's part of the group, with Pickford and Fairbanks and Griffith starting United Artists back in the day because they wanted like the filmmakers, the creatives to be in charge of what they were doing. Like they wanted authorship over their own careers. And yeah, people could have wanted that who were like unknown comedians that we don't know anymore from the silent era because they just didn't achieve that level of financial independence because they were that popular and making that much money. Also, there's something to like the silent era where like, what is it, like 70% of the movies are lost. So it who knows what lost, genius maybe is in, the history books that we'll never know about. Chaplin stuff has survived. So there is sort of it's a limited pool then of talent to go back and look at nowadays from that time period.
Well, but the fact that he makes it into the 30s in the way that he does.
Oh, yes, yes.
I mean, it's just
because like Fairbanks didn't.
Yeah.
Mary Pickford didn't.
Right.
Griffith, what are those sound films from Griffith that everybody, still praises? It was a hard transition and Chaplin did it as skillfully as anybody.
Yeah. I mean, he made,
or the most skillfully, really.
I mean, he does City Lights, which is like after sound comes in and is not really a sound movie at all. And it's still huge.
Yeah.
And then he does he pulls off Modern Times, and then he does this, which is like his full on talkie 10 years after over 10 years after sound had come in. And I mean, that's it. But then also, should we talk about him as a political figure up until this point? I mean, obviously the types of, the underdog positioning, certainly something like Modern Times, in which the orientation on industrial labor and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
There is a political element to him. Nothing is going to be political like this movie, which we'll explain in a second. But, he does have a politics in the New Deal era.
Yeah. And even before that, as best I could find, I think the FBI first opened a file on Chaplin in 1922.
I mean, Hoover's FBI, who didn't they have a file on?
But, well, I mean, true. Hoover really like kind of hit the gas on Chaplin once this movie came out and some of his personal life that we'll get into, Chaplin's personal life that we'll get into in a moment. But yeah, you can read a lot of like at least leftist friendly, perspectives on a whole bunch of Chaplin's films, like you're saying there with Modern Times up through the Gold Rush, like the ideas of greed. There's a lot of those topics directly addressed in his films. And then also he has very much some pro-Soviet Union stances publicly after World War I, even going into World War II, like you're saying, through the Depression and going into the New Deal era, where he was expressing admiration for like the communist, like strict anti-fascist stance, and several comments I did not clip for our document, but about the Spanish Civil War, the Eastern Front. Like he's very, very much seems like on the right side of history there. Well, at a time when that could cost you in Hollywood.
I mean, 1930 Soviet Union is complicated. Part of it is...
Well, it wasn't a blanket pro this statement. He was very much like, look, they are rigidly anti-fascist, and I'm very anti-fascist myself.
Right. So part of it is that he's a consistent anti-fascist.
Yeah.
And he's a hard New Dealer, and that sort of leads him into sort of I'm sort of debating like fellow traveler. So like when you refer to somebody as a fellow traveler with communism, it's sort of a specific thing, and it usually means like you just don't join. Well, it doesn't just mean this, but like it might mean you just don't join the party. And I would say that he's farther from that in the sense that like I don't think of him. He doesn't have a communist or an anti-capitalist politics, though he does have an anti-capitalist critique, where he has a critique of capitalism. Mm-hmm. But he's in that, this is a period, it's certainly in the 30s and in the United States, where the Communist Party has a lot of cultural influence. It hits above its weight class, and it sounds like he's probably in that broader sphere in a sense, and also has a certain degree of sympathy with the Soviet Union as a project, maybe, and also is like a rigid anti-fascist. And frankly, we're going to talk about the famous speech at the end of this movie. I don't know about his views on anti-racism in general. But there's a famous speech. We'll talk about it. And he mentions Jew and Gentile, and he mentions black and white, which in 1940 is not something that you have to say.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's not an accident.
Right.
That's not an
I mean,
accident.
there's a lot in that speech, and that phrase just went right by me.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
in that moment it feels striking. So he, he is a broadly a progressive politics.
I did also find a couple quotes from him because I was trying to nail down maybe some specific political views, and he has a couple of quotes where he just called himself an anarchist as well. So
Interesting.
yeah, interesting and complicated dude who just seems, like you said, yeah, with your fellow traveler comments, it just seems like it was like, okay, I like where this guy's coming from, but also then you see the results of this film and you're like, yes, absolutely.
So should we talk about this movie and its context and
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Sorry, I was like pausing. So it's like there's just volumes and volumes of books written on like biographies of Charlie Chaplin, and we were just like summing them up in like under 7 minutes. Doesn't seem like it really does it justice, but it's I think that's a good context to jump into this film in particular. Yes.
All right, listen,
We only have so much time.
he's a complicated political figure, and he's a unique, brilliant star, both as a director and as an actor, and apparently as a composer. And he's I don't know, he's maybe the most famous person we've ever talked about on this show.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the level of fame that I don't know, outside of maybe like a Taylor Swift these days, like a globally recognized icon in his day, the likes of which was like happening for the first time as well, with just like a bit more of a connected world via, media and the film industry as it was being distributed worldwide in a way that, like books kind of were, but this is it's like when celebrity was invented almost, or what we think of as a modern celebrity.
And doing a particular type of shtick,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think anyone else has ever really
Nailed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a nuanced type of shtick here.
Right. It
as well. Yeah.
opens yourself up to like a level of artistic depth.
Sweet. All right. Well, let's jump in. Isaac, what is The Great Dictator about?
It's about Hitler. So part of it is that The Great Dictator, I mean, there's a certain, I mean, literally, like, I was just going through some of like the Criterion Extra feature. I mean, I was reading a bunch of things for this, and one of the things, and one of them points out, like, this film was inevitable. I was like, I don't know if it was inevitable, but
Oh, that's an interesting comment.
it's a little overdone.
Yeah.
But it's part of the clash between Chaplin and Hitler is inevitable, partially because Hitler stole his stash.
Oh, stash. I'm sorry. That. Yes. Yes.
I mean, maybe literally. We don't know, but
Yeah.
it seems very likely that Hitler took his mustache. That's how famous Chaplin is.
Yes. I've never honestly thought about the origin between those two, but obviously one of them was the tramp and one of them wasn't.
Yep, exactly. One of them was a schmuck, and anyway, so
Yeah.
like part of it is that you have the rise of fascism in the 1930s. You have the rise of a new type of, I mean, you can find the origins of fascism in the American context. Frankly, we were premature because you could say the 19 teens, and I would say that maybe the original Klan of the immediate post-Civil War period, one could say, but I think that the teens and 20s Ku Klux Klan, in which it had millions of members, is a sort of a premature type of fascist movement. But in Europe, it starts in the 1920s in Italy with sort of the post World War I crises. And then in Germany, it's like as an ideology, it's on the march. And we've talked about fascism before.
We have on this show?
I think so. Yeah, a bit.
Yeah.
But like, distinguishing features of sort of a right-wing politics of the mass,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on the march, and we're, by the time this movie comes out, World War II has already started in the most earliest of stages in
Mhm.
Europe. So Chaplin feels the need to actually respond to this.
Right. Well, and also just date wise too, like writes the script like 1938, roughly. So who knows when like the actual idea started for him, even though the film comes out obviously in 1940, but
Okay.
so
so he feels the need to satirize and to go after
Very early on, right? Yes, yeah.
he's an anti-fascist. This is a point at which Hollywood is not doing this.
No, I found a couple of examples, but not. I mean, this is like the official, like first, like big, like Hollywood production here.
It's big Hollywood production because the German film market was important, and because there were fascist supporters in the United States, and also there was, a general isolationism. So this was something that was broadly avoided. So him doing this, I mean, this is like the movie of the year. This is an incredibly important moment politically.
Yeah.
I mean, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who he'd known since the 20s or something, maybe the teens. No, actually, I think he knew him. He knew him in he met him in like 1918.
I was like late teens, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Wrote a letter to him saying you should, and being encouraging of him doing this film. So it is Chaplin takes on Hitler is like a very big deal, and this is a film. The Great Dictator is, and not only that, we don't deal with anti-Semitism. By the 40s, you can find them. I literally just watched a noir that's like against anti-Semitism, but in 1940 you don't. And so part of what he's doing with this film is he's playing two characters. He's playing a Hitler stand-in, and he's playing a Jewish World War I veteran who is like a Rip Van Winkle figure, who has literally been in a mental hospital since the end of World War I and doesn't know what has happened to his country.
Yeah, amnesia character, a Jewish barber returning home finally.
And then they're in a stand-in for Germany, but barely. And so basically this shows both the lead into the war, because the war begins, and at the same time the progression of violence and oppression toward Jews, really in sort of the Kristallnacht era of the Nazi regime. So that would be breaking windows. There are concentration camps, but they're not specifically for Jews. Concentration camps, not death camps, and it's important to distinguish them. Are first made, for communists, basically for political opposition, and then more and more people are put in them. So we see the parallel tracks until they finally meet, in a sense, at the end of the film.
Yeah.
And so he's taking he's taking on themes of racism and the nature of authoritarian rule very directly. And also but at the same time, constant, constant humiliation. Because the other major context for this movie is Triumph of the Will.
Yes.
So he is directly responding to Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will. There are shots and things that are taken as much as he can directly from it, but in every single one, he's taking Hitler's style, he's taking the German language, he's taking all these things, and he's making fun of them savagely. Every moment. I mean, we're sort of talking about his style is not one of constant jokes, but when his Hitler stand-in is up there, it is nothing but jokes a mile a minute.
Yeah, and it's verbal wordplay, which is not the realm of a brilliant pantomime silent film comedian, but knocks it out of the park.
Yeah. Well, this is his first fully. I mean, his use of sound in this movie,
but specifically his voice, which I thought was this is really okay. True artiste, knows what he's doing completely, and also just the inherent mocking of not even using German. Just you hear it's just made up language he's using for this country of Tomania, where it's but you hear sauerkraut every now and then. You're oh, he's just ruthlessly mocking.
What about the fact that he's almost the only one who uses the fake language?
That's true. Yeah. Well, there's some fake Italian too once he meets the Mussolini stand-in.
Right. It's
But that's an interesting way to do it, where you're kind of taking the piss out of the whole thing, and also because then it's billed first the Hitler stand-in is doing, you said, the Leni Riefenstahl. The first time I think we see him is doing a Leni Riefenstahl Triumph of the Will sort of speech to a whole bunch of the troops.
Right.
And then also the finale of the film is to a comically just this huge gathering of basically everybody in the country almost. It's almost done in a newsreel thing where there's a commentator doing the translation. So he's doing sauerkraut, Guten Tag, blah, this nonsense made up, fake German thing. And then you're getting the comedy of a translator poorly translating, one word becomes 5 sentences, and a big speech, 5 or 6 unbroken sentences of his is thanks everybody. You know, it's a goofy, like another layer of comedy of the translator too.
But that scene, part of it is that there's an attack on the propaganda style in
Mhm.
that scene because he gives you enough clues as to what he's actually talking about, which is
Mhm.
usually some sort of blood-curdling anti-Semitism,
Right.
or something about his hatred for democracies, what have you. Like you can actually tell that's what he's saying, and the translator, who's supposed to be, a translator as part of his regime,
Yeah.
the shortenness of it is because he's not actually saying what he's really saying. And so part of it is, I think that's an attack on Nazi propaganda, and certainly in the American context where they're distorting how extreme what Hitler is actually
Right.
saying is.
Right.
And so it's like, I mean, because every single moment in this is, I think, a calculated attack on what, how fascism was portrayed in the West
Yes.
in 1938 or what have you. The swastika stand-in is a double cross.
Oh, like the two plus signs.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
double cross,
Yeah.
which is
Hilarious.
it's hilarious. It's hilarious, but it's like you can't compromise with people. With these people, you can't
Right.
do the Neville Chamberlain thing because you can't trust them.
Right.
So it's there in every, like, there's a hammered home political point in every little bit here.
And it is, but then because it's also just what Chaplin was exposed to as just a person in the world, especially here, like in Hollywood in that time. Like he wasn't in with the regime or anything like that. So like he's getting like the media portrayal of like what's going on over in Europe. And he was like, well, I'm seeing what's going on. And this is just through the general media, which yeah, I think is worth pointing out. Cause like we're watching now from 2025 eyes. It's different because like we know the full scope of what was going on. But at the point in time when he's writing this, it's like the late 30s.
And I think this is actually a important thing about the movie. I mean, he later on says that he wouldn't have. So he shows the Jewish ghettos. We should talk about sort of how anti-Semitism is portrayed in this and how the regime's behavior is portrayed in this. If he'd known what was going to happen during the war with the Holocaust and so forth, he would not, to the extremity that the regime was going to go to, he might not have made this movie
Right.
because
It's too much.
it's too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the thing is, this is not a perfect movie to me. I think it's kind of messy. And even reviews at the time, like like you can look at reviews at the time where they're like, this is a work of genius. It may not be a great movie. I think it's a great movie, but I actually think the two halves of the movie don't totally mesh in terms of like pacing and so forth, which is like fine. It's a work of brilliance. It's not like City Lights is a perfect movie,
Okay.
like is
Yeah.
like just a perfect piece of cinema. And I don't think this is. I think it's actually kind of messy around the edges. I also don't think that like matters very much.
Sure.
But I guess like we could like talk about what he's doing in his sections with his Jewish character and then his sections with our Hitler stand-in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like in terms of his portrayal of sort of his Jewish character and other and the Jews in the ghetto in this sort of Germany stand-in, like what kind of comedy are they doing here?
I mean, some of it's standard kind of Chaplin brilliant comedy because then you also have Paulette Goddard as like Hannah, the neighbor, the barber's neighbor, who the first time we see her, like she actively wants to be fighting the stormtroopers. And then they throw a bunch of tomatoes at her and whatnot. So she's like ready to go. And then when she sees like this amnesiac barber like return to the neighborhood after 20 years, he doesn't know what's going on in the country at all. She's like, and he doesn't
know that he shouldn't get into fights with these people.
Yeah, he doesn't do like Heil Hinkles or anything when the stormtroopers come around and then they're like roughing him up. She's ready to she literally like in a silent movie staple, a cartoon staple, she whacks them with a frying pan on the head to knock them out.
I mean, that's the thing, right? He's like mixing film language in this movie, right?
Yeah.
Like he's mixing silent style
shtick.
like like silent shtick.
Yeah.
And that's I think what makes this so unique is that like there's elements. Actually, I'll talk about this later because it's in the Hinkle parts where I can actually feel a little bit of Marx Brothers in there. But like,
oh yeah,
but it's very much still mixing those styles, but like he's got his sort of melodrama and his sort of humanizing elements about all of the Jewish characters.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are portrayed in negative ways. He absolutely avoids anything that might be an anti-Semitic stereotype of the period,
which were plentiful in the period.
which would be plentiful in the period.
Yeah,
and
in other films, sorry, but yeah.
would be very easy to do even for somebody who's standing up against anti-Semitism in this period, but he's very careful about it.
Well, and also like the scene I was just describing too is technically the meet cute scene for the romantic subplot
Right.
that's going on here too. And then again, because we're watching 2025, we know where this is going to go for this, this particular Jewish ghetto that we're talking about. There's that tinge of just like, oh, like the minute the comedy stops, you're just like, oh wait, but I know where this is going. But at the time, I feel like that'd be interesting to watch in the 40s or in 1940.
In 1940, we wouldn't know where this is going, but you can even feel the escalation. So like that initial scene where they throw tomatoes is very much of like a Kristallnacht moment in which you're repressing the Jewish population, but you're not extermination is not necessarily in the air. But this is a period. I mean, if you're in the mid or this point in the 20th century, there's been a lot of population displacements on ethno-nationalist grounds. Starting at the very least with, I mean, most prominently in the First World War, and so that is an imaginable thing. And so part of it is constantly, you have Jewish characters talking about we're going to have to leave.
Yeah.
We're going to be forced from this country. I think the moments in this movie that might slow down a little bit for me are like this sort of the just the life in the ghetto. But there is I mean, there's multiple. He's a barber. There's multiple barber scenes.
Well, those life moments though too, real quick, are like where he infuses his style of comedy.
Right.
So to me, like those things kind of breeze right by because like being a barber, after he has the meet cute and he and Hannah are kind of flirting, he's gonna clean her up, quote unquote, and he puts like the shaving lather on her face, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm a barber. I'm used to guys." Like it's the little touches like that are like these humorous little connections the characters get.
There's the scene where he's cutting someone's hair to, is it Brahms?
Might be, yeah.
Which, I mean, there's direct connections between that. There's similar shticks that you'll see using classical music, let's say with Bugs Bunny. But, Bugs Bunny is doing that in an homage to Chaplin, and somebody watching Bugs Bunny at the time would realize that. I mean, these are some of the most foundational comedy sticks you'll ever see.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
It's brilliant stuff, but he's very intentionally humanizing Jews. And part of what he's doing is, and he puts this in her mouth, she's the one who sort of brings about the political point about the sort of Jewish condition under Nazism, which is we just want to live our lives, right?
Yes.
Why won't they allow us to have normality?
And did you notice kind of an interesting directorial flourish I hadn't noticed before when she does that little speech? It's directly to the camera. It's not to him. It's directly to the camera.
It's directly to. It's very, very intentional, and I mean that happens throughout the film. But like the only other political point that's made that way is his final speech.
His final speech. Yeah, no, it's those two are directly to the camera,
and it's it's so intentional. And I wanted to sort of keep the two lines of the movie separate, but I can't totally do that. So part of it is that what happened, you see there's an arc where as the regime is trying to get funding to go to war, at a certain point they're trying to get funding from a Jewish financier.
Whose name is?
Oh, I forgot.
Epstein.
Epstein. Well, it's
the ears weird these days. I'm sorry. It popped. I was like, whoa.
So they lay off stormtroopers going into the ghetto and repression, and you see among the Jewish population who don't know politically why the regime is doing this, hey, maybe we've got a chance. Maybe there's some hope. And as soon as it's clear that the regime is not going to be able to get financing this way,
they head in.
They head in, and Heikel gives a anti-Semitic speech, and is literally right when the two characters, the barber and his love interest are going on a date, and they're literally just about to get Heikel pins because maybe he's not that bad.
Right. That's right. Yeah. He orders 2 pins, and then they hear the radio address.
Right. So like everything, part of what it is that he's dramatizing. First off, why appeasement doesn't make sense, because these people are only doing these things for opportunistic reasons.
Yes.
And the second thing is that he's showing what it is like to it is at the moment of, part of it is our romance is never consummated in this film.
Mm-hmm.
They're not after a few more scenes after this, and they're never going to see each other again in the movie, though they will be able to sense each other. Um, but like because in under the context of this repression, you don't get that.
Right.
So literally, it's on their date, and suddenly they have to break it up and get off the streets before the stormtroopers come back.
Yes. And the only thing, kind of like in a plot mechanic sense, that keeps these two main characters safe and a little bit of safety within the neighborhood, at least enough time to escape, is that in the opening scene where the Jewish barber is fighting in the Western Front and presumably World War I, he saves the life of a guy, Commander Schultz, who is then around and high enough ranking within the stormtrooper ranks that he's like, oh no, this is a buddy of mine, leave this barber alone.
It's such an interesting other element because he's portraying. I mean, this is somebody who's both gone into sort of the Nazi party as part of the machinery, but also
while the guy who saved his life was in this amnesiac coma thing.
Right. I mean, I think part of it is, this does represent sort of an element. There's a political point about sort of the humanistic connection between people, also that there may be parts of the German military which are not as on board, which in historical reality,
true enough to some degrees.
This has been a long post-war debate because a lot of German officers portray themselves in those terms.
Well, it's an easy out once it's done as well. Like, oh no, I wasn't that into it.
Well, I think part of what it is that there are clearly members of the officer corps and there are plots against Hitler who don't like him, but they don't actually end up having a problem with killing people. They just don't like Nazis. Or they don't like Nazism and the regime, but they take part in the atrocity. This is what sort of the ultimate sort of like post-war thing is that the clean Wehrmacht narrative, basically, where the army was fine, and it's like it's not true.
Right. But within this story, though, again, like just from a plot mechanics point of view, you have Schultz because you need Schultz around because that's how we get the mistaken identity set up for the finale and the final scene.
And Schultz is portraying a particular thing, and it's also showing. I mean, part of his political argument is that it's not an accident. This is a veteran,
right?
So this is a Jew who has been completely committed in a sense to their country, right? Because the argument of anti-Semitism is that Jews are not right of their country, right? They're cosmopolitan and will undermine you from without. And so Schultz allows you to anchor him in, within that particular part of his political argument, I think, within the film. Can we talk a little bit about the portrayal? Well, actually, is there more that you want to bring out of this part?
No, I think we got that pretty well. I mean, we're not doing like a scene by scene commentary, but I think that's a good broad strokes to counter narrative with the Hinkle.
So Hinkle, well, let me just say, like, his barber character is not the tramp, but he's very tramp-like,
especially the beginning when he shows up like the 20 years later, like has a very like even like it doesn't have necessarily like the hat and cane the same way, I don't believe, but like the suit, the fitting of the suit and stuff, and the mustache, like I know what we're doing here.
And he is that sort of innocent, right? Because he sets him up without memory to allow him to be sort of bumbling innocent figure.
The fish out of water. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
I'm just trying to get by.
Yeah. And then comedy ensues.
And part of it is putting that like figure in the context of state repression. Actually, all right, I'm sorry, I can't quite go away from this. This whole film series has been about the image of repression on film. And despite I think actually for our purposes here and for the level of repression we're talking about at the moment that we face in, let's say, the United States, through a lot of the rest of the world, actually, this may not ultimately capture what Nazism is or what it will become. But I actually think it captures the element of the uncertainty and the destruction of people's lives. When we think about what ICE is doing in cities today, it is that people just cannot live their lives because the stormtroopers will come and take you away or destroy your shop or do what have you. And so that constant disruption in which the very pleasures of basic life are taken away, because you have to stay off the street. I think this portrays really well. And it is one that directly ties to our moment. Yeah,
very much so. Which is a great filmmaking balance here, because like there's nothing funny about that.
There's nothing funny about it. How does he make it funny?
But yeah. So, and in this particular case too, as the parallel stories go, we don't see Hinkle's rise to power. Actually, I remember the first time I watched this movie because the opening is like that, like I said, like that presumably like World War One battle experience, and Chaplin gets quite a bit of comedy, honestly, out of that. Quick little, like not quick little, but like opening like what is it like 8 to 10 minute scene where he's on the battlefield.
Yeah.
He had done another. He did a short. It was actually a World War One comedy short in 1918 called Shoulder Arms. It was like a two-reeler, so it was territory. It's not the same jokes at all, but like it shows that he is able to like, it's a dude going through military training and going, to battle or whatever. So like this was territory Chaplin had gotten comedy from before. So that wasn't too surprising. But the first time I watched it, I thought that was the character who was going to become, that was who was going to become Henkel.
Yeah, because that's the background of
The first time I watched, that's the background of Hitler, right?
Hitler.
So
and since they look the same.
Yeah.
Which is not something that is remarked on in the movie at all until the end.
The very end, right. Because presumably everybody knows what Henkel looks like. Around like the Jewish ghetto and everything. It seems like you'd be aware of like who this dictator is, but they don't really show you that in the movie.
And
it's
the
like,
stormtroopers would know what he looks like.
You'd think, yeah.
So on. Is there actually a point here? There might be. So the Henkel parts. So we see this parallel track with the dictator as egotistical and sort of a buffoon.
Absolutely. I mean, even the opening speech when we first see him, he's like has to stop because he's coughing with his fake German in his throat, and like the microphones kind of like bend away from him, and he takes a drink of water, then he pours water like down his pants.
Yeah,
pours water in his ears. Like it's goofy.
He's all of these things. We're seeing the mechanics of a regime. I mean, he's also satirizing leading the leading figures of the Nazi regime. So you have Garbage, played by Henry Daniels, who's Goebbels.
Oh yeah.
And you have Field Marshal Herring, who is Goring.
Right.
Goring. So, and in which sort of Garbage is sort of like the man behind, right? Because he's constantly coaching Henkel through various things. And I think you see early on, you would think that like the anti-Semitism, so anti-Semitism is portrayed as a way to manipulate the German or what have you masses who are, through the hardship of, through economic hardship, which is sort of portraying that like the anti-Semitism is not like an actual core belief that they believe, but is actually just a way of controlling people. And then at the same time, but later on as the movie goes on, it's very clear that no, they actually are just anti-Semitic, but they also deploy it in cynical ways to manipulate people.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's actually like a really important thing to show because you see it in both ways. And then, for instance, in our current moment, one would say that it's anti, let's say, immigrants, language, and racism is both deployed in a cynical political way, but is also like what they believe.
Right.
What about the comedy in this stuff in these sections? Like, how is?
I feel like if you watch like AFI clips during like best of movie specials or like what's the iconic scene from The Great Dictator? I feel like it's like the balletic scene where he's dancing around with like the world, like an inflatable globe, and he's like, the world is in my hands. Oh, I could be dictator of the world. I feel like that's usually the clip that people play from The Great Dictator.
I think it is because it's one of those. I think it's one of those things that only Chaplin can do. I mean, there's this grace and whimsy as this dictator literally plays with the world, and in the end, accidentally deflates it.
Yes, which the full context of that scene too is pretty amazing because it's like I forget if it's Garbage or Herring. I think it's Garbage that kind of plants the idea. Is like, wait, you could be dictator of the world, and he like climbs the curtains. Like he's so excited. He's like, I need a moment.
And there's a point where he's afraid of himself.
Yeah, he wants to like kind of live with this for a minute and like realize like, oh wait, what's going on here? Yeah, and then the world pops at the end of it. And he's just like, and he like slumps over his desk. End of scene. But these are like the most comedic scenes of the movie.
Yeah.
Anything with Henkel, everything down to like when he finally meets, I think we mentioned him but when he meets Benzio Napolini, played by Jack Oakie, who's like a parody of Benito Mussolini. There's like a literal food fight. There's like a crazy dance sequence. None of these scenes are, I mean, they're I don't know. Realistic's not the right word. Like they're based on, I'm sure what Chaplin's like, okay, this is probably what's going on behind closed doors, but amps everything up to a level of comedy that just takes the piss out of all of it.
Yeah, he's making a mockery of both of these dictators. This is, and I don't just mean because there's a a Chico style Italian accent going on through all this, but that I mean, but this is the food fight scene is specifically feels somewhat Marx Brothers
It's
esque.
very Marx Brothers. Yeah. But also, it's not that far away from like silent film comedy, like Pie in the Face kind of nonsense.
These people are all coming out of the same
Yes.
place.
Yeah.
But he's also, I mean, but like part of it is that he's making these two fascist dictators. He's portraying the rivalry, which is real,
Mhm.
right? They don't necessarily get along, and it's not clear early on, in the 30s who's the junior partner, right? Because you would think it's gonna be Hitler as the junior partner,
Excellent point.
but Germany is such a more powerful country than Italy is an industrial power that doesn't end up really being the case.
Mhm.
But there's rivalry, and you part of it is, it makes a mockery of their diplomacy. It makes a mockery of their their sheer pettiness, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The constant sort of egotistical jousting between them, making fun of the pageantry of them coming together. I mean, the scene where Napoleone shows up and the train stops in the wrong spot,
Yeah.
and Napoleone won't get out of the train because the carpet's not there.
Right. I do not exit a car without carpet.
I mean, it's just one thing after another. It's really
But down to even like the joke of like military pins as awards. Like it's just every layer of like presumed authority within like this military dictatorship is ripe for parody.
right.
And he does like at every point. And it never really overstays its welcome to me. Like it doesn't, most of the scenes don't really go on too long, because coming out of the world of like silent comedies, you're looking at like 1 and 2 reelers. Once you have a plot going outside of a 1 and 2 reeler where you'd have like a set situation like a hotel lobby or a dance hall, and then you'd milk as much comedy as you could out of those scenes. Some of the, like maybe a Buster Keaton or Harold Lloyd features, like they maybe needed a bit more of an editing to like kind of take down, like there's just too much shtick going on here and it's waylaying or it's sidetracking the story that's really propelling this forward. I feel like Chaplin was a bit more of a master at that, where it would go right to the edge of just too much, and then it would be on to the next scene. So like even like the food fight scene between the two guys, like it ends like right when you're kind of like, there's not much more comedy to be had here.
And I actually, so this is actually where I think this is a slightly better pace than the scenes in the ghetto. I just, a couple of those just went a little bit too long for me.
Too long. Okay, yeah.
But I understand not, and it's still all brilliant. But yeah, I think it's just a slightly better pace. It feels almost like two movies that they're interlinked and they have to be interlinked, but it's like they're running this parallel track. And I have to admit, because before I saw the movie, I'd seen his speech at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I kept expecting the switch over to happen earlier.
Oh, like the mistaken identity swap sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so important. I realize now it's so important that it happens really, really late.
Yeah.
Not actually an ongoing shtick. Once it happened, I was actually sort of thrilled a little bit more because there's the tension.
Yep.
So basically,
and you know where it's building to as well at that point.
right. So like part of it is that the barber is eventually captured and sent to a concentration camp.
Yep.
And at the same time, we see the machinations of.
Well, sorry, I didn't turn it up, but Schultz too is sent.
And Schultz is sent to the concentration camp. And at the same time, we see this sort of diplomatic machinations in which Adenoid Hinkle, like immediately with the advice of Garbage, basically he's supposed. I don't know if the country they're supposed to invade is a Poland analog. It's probably a Poland analog, but basically, him and Benzino Napolini are competing over who's like Napolini doesn't want like Napolini has troops on the border. He can't invade until those troops are out of the way.
Right.
He betrays Napolini, right? So he betrays his fellow fascists
mm-hmm.
in order to do this invasion. And this is the country where Hannah and our other Jewish characters had fled, who had not ended up in the concentration camp.
Right.
And I think one of the things about the scene of the invasion is, and when you see them in the Jewish neighborhoods in the country that's been invaded, and they see them going after Hannah as well, it is actually more violent than the earlier scenes in the Ghetto. It's more extreme. It's more
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote in my notes it was like it was very sobering at that point where I was like, the comedy's gone
the comedy's
by
gone.
then. Yeah.
The tension has been raised up
Hmm.
really effectively, and the stakes, right? Because now the world is in danger, right? Like
Right. It's
now
getting real.
it's getting more real, and it's really powerful. And then part of it is like, how does the switchover happen? It's like, what is it, like Henkel's duck hunting?
Yeah. They steal uniforms. I don't think I did those in my notes, but they steal uniforms.
Well, the Barber and Schultz steal officers' uniforms and escape from the concentration camp.
Right.
And at the same time, Henkel is duck hunting. Like, there's no mention of him duck hunting. There's no mention of anything. He's just out duck hunting while his army is invading another country, and gets picked up by the patrols who are hunting for the Barber who's escaped, thinking that he's the
Because he looks
escaped
alike.
Barber.
Right. Because he's in civilian clothes and he like falls out of his boat.
So the last thing we see of
Yeah.
Henkel is him being taken off to his own concentration
Oh,
camps
to the camp. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
because he looks like,
The barber.
which it's hard not to see that as a slight a comment on the fact that people would say that Hitler and Hank, I mean, the whole thing has been Hitler and Chaplin look like each other, so let's switch them over.
Right.
But the fact that he's hoisted on his own petard by the fact that they look like each other
Yeah.
is, when I originally watched that scene, I felt like that was too fast or like too perfunctory. It was like, wait a second, what is this duck hunting? There's nobody else with him, whatever. But
Yeah.
now it's like, no, no, no. This is also just a razor sharp attack.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is quick in the movie. It is moved along very quickly. Like that scene, we're like, wait, okay, I guess he's out duck hunting.
Well, I think that's the thing, is like, it's
Yeah.
so fast that you're just like, wait, what?
What?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And the Barber ends up, Schultz and the Barber run into the invading army, and he's confused and is sent up to the podium to speak,
To rally the troops.
to rally the troops.
Yeah. Again, a triumph of the will kind of parody here, because like you just see just like this ocean of troops. See it like I mean they're on land, but like just this, vast number of people there waiting for a speech.
Right. I mean, he's speaking. He's literally giving a speech to the world. And
Yeah.
the first speech we hear is Garbage giving a very realistic Nazi speech.
Mhm.
And then we hear Chaplin facing the audience.
Again, a direct to camera address.
And so he gives this. So part of it is that the Barber, who has been so sort of unassuming and doesn't speak very much. Like, part of it is he doesn't really. I mean, it's a talky movie, but he doesn't actually. He hasn't had very long lines or whatever. Pulls out within himself to give this speech.
But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives. tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power. The power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Which, outside of like the dancing around, bopping the world on his hands, like this speech isn't really the clip everybody sees, but it's a very well clipped speech that has made the rounds over the years. Where you said you had knew this part before seeing the movie.
Yeah, well, for one thing, I remember the first time Trump got elected, I saw it circulating.
Sure.
And so he gives this, this speech about the ability of humanity, that humanity is not inherently hateful. It's a humanistic speech, right? About how, there is enough for everyone to live and that we should be supporting each other. I mean, here's the thing is like, is this a leftist speech? I actually don't think it is in the sense of like, directly leftist. It feels to me like it melds elements of the New Deal. I mean, there's almost direct callbacks to New Deal language with things that he's going to get in trouble for this. And we're going to talk about I think we do need to talk about the reception of this movie.
Yeah.
It's right on the edge, honestly, from being something that might be explicitly seen as leftist.
I mean, it's one of those, like, I think in the context it feels very much so, but just because like it's the counterbalance to like clear fascism right here.
Right.
I mean, look at the troops he's addressing and like the nation that Hinkle has cultivated up to that point in the movie.
Right. And, this is like the almost, this is the last scene of the movie, and literally Hannah hears his voice on the wind and feels hope through it. I mean, he's calling the soldiers to fight against those who treat them as cattle, but that they are not cattle.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling the soldiers to not be. I mean, there's this incredible sort of wish fulfillment element to it of, that of only a beautiful speech could end this.
Right. I thought she was listening to his speech on the radio.
But
like the end of the movie, she stands up and she's kind of like looking off into the distance as if like, yeah, she feels the physical connection, but she's like, wait a minute, I recognize that voice. That's the barber.
Yeah, is she hearing it on the radio or is she hearing it on the wind? I'm not sure. Maybe she's hearing it on the radio. But like, that's the end of the movie, is this like,
speech, the end, we're done.
Supposed to have in some ways undone this or directly countered it.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's surreal, right? I mean, he jumps into this surreal. I mean, there's a tonal, there's such a rapid tonal shift there.
It did really, I know it was like the year before, I think, but it gave me like especially the end speech kind of gave me like a Capra vibes.
Interesting.
Like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, like the human. I mean, I think it's a better speech than that. But I mean, that was I think it was 39, but it's also clearly what he's been building towards the whole time. Like you said, we're waiting for like the swap to happen between the barber and Hinkle, and then like you said, it happens more towards the end. It moves along real quickly, and it's really to get everything that you've been watching for an hour and 55 minutes to this speech.
This is the moment of catharsis.
Yes.
And it's a political speech by the biggest movie star that has been directly to his audience.
Right. And thus the world, because he was a worldwide star at this point. And again, it's like one of two speeches in the movie that are directly to the camera, and it's just like a headshot.
And there's like different stories, including ones that do come out of Germany from defectors, that Hitler watched the movie alone twice, but he only watched it alone.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall.
I mean, it's incredible, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of believe that. Hitler watched, Hitler was into Westerns. I mean, everybody did back then, but like he was into the movies.
Right.
And
But another world leader that watched it
was
Roosevelt. Yeah.
Who had encouraged him to make the movie in the first place. And
Yeah.
this is causing us diplomatic problems in Latin America, and was annoyed with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder.
Do you?
Well, it's interesting because of course Roosevelt is actually for getting into the war. Like he's encouraging it for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Like ultimately Roosevelt is not actually, Roosevelt is looking for an opening to get into the war. I don't know at this point, but I think so.
I would think so, but also just the fact that the Hollywood as government propaganda machine is about at full speed by the late 30s, early 40s. We're like, oh, if we're getting into a war, it's about to get up to full speed with like the Why We Fight series and like all the World War II propaganda that Hollywood gladly provided the US government. He may be thinking about this. He's like, oh, he's making an anti-authoritarian, anti-Hitler movie. This could be interesting. Yes, keep making that. And then he sees it and he's like, oh wait, I didn't want that kind of one.
Yeah, I wonder.
So it's a little bit of buyers. I mean, also he wasn't like financing it. Like you said, it was an encouragement because they did know each other. But then once it comes out, it's like, oh wait, you went that direction?
I mean,
well, now it's a problem for me because I'm trying to do this, and this also.
Yeah, I mean, there's specific political context that things are made in. I think so. Part of it is this is a controversial movie. Isolationism had been the dominant diplomatic position in the United States. There are also pro-fascists, and Hollywood, I think, as mentioned, has not been making movies that are directly anti-Hitler because the German market is actually important.
Which also interesting because there's such a huge Jewish transplant population that's like running the studios.
Yep,
at the time as well. But they're very assimilationist, right? They're avoiding.
They're avoiding the direct connection between themselves and what's happening, or being Jewish in a certain sense, right?
Right. While also like trying to get as much family over here to the States as they possibly can.
Right.
And seeing like what, the rising fascism is doing over there. There was, official Hollywood productions. There was a Three Stooges short that came out the same year as this called You Nazi Spy, Nazti. That is kind of interesting, but it's just, it's like a two-reeler comedy. And then a couple of independent financed and produced ones in like the late more like mid 30s. Hitler's Reign of Terror is one of them. It's kind of credited as the first American anti-Nazi film, but again, like independent productions. These are not Hollywood productions, especially at the scale of like the most famous actor who's currently alive at the time being Chaplin making such a statement. It's huge.
This is the biggest deal. It's certainly the most important movie of the year. It's the second highest grossing.
Mm-hmm. 5 Oscar nominations. Like the controversy element is interesting to me on this particular movie because it feels like it's controversial from like the U.S. government powers that be sort of perspective, but the audience seems to have like warmly like you don't get to be number 2 at the box office because a bunch of people hate your movie and are protesting it necessarily. Well, I'm sure there were people protesting it, but
there are literally people.
It was hugely popular and worldwide.
I think, but I think it. For one thing, I think it's complicated. I mean, there isn't. Isolationism is real as a political force, and sympathy for fascism is real as a political force. I can see it being I mean, there's a reason they're not making these movies yet. So, I think it's both. He's popular. Not everybody who's seeing it is necessarily people who agree with him. But it's the new Charlie Chaplin movie. I think it is controversial, but it's not going to be very soon, for very long, and then it will be again.
Well, then I think the controversy also comes from at this point you do have the Hays Code in effect, so like you can and cannot show certain things and get a certificate and get distribution. But on top of the Hays Code, there was all kinds of state and city censor boards.
Yeah.
So this one did run into, quote unquote controversy with a lot of those. Again, I don't necessarily feel like the controversy comes from the general movie going public. It's from the people within the industry as a whole. Specifically in Chicago, I remember that censor board was like, we're going to piss off the German population in this city. This movie could be a problem.
So, I mean, I think there's a controversy after this, but then, he's going to, by the post-war period, is going to get hit hard by McCarthyism. The FBI is going to go after him heavily.
Mm-hmm.
His popularity is going to take it. I mean, obviously, his long term as a classic, but like during the McCarthyist period, he's hit hard. We can see why that's happening, because he certainly opens himself up. There are, pro-Russian statements. He also is hit because he marries an 18-year-old.
Yeah, there's that.
So, many such cases within the history of Hollywood, and I know we're dealing with the Epstein affair right now in terms of, but he's he's in his 50s.
I was gonna say, while being in his 50s, and when you marry an 18-year-old, presumably like you knew that person before they turned 18.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not without its, gross contingent there. I mean, we're not talking like an Errol Flynn level, but it's not great.
It's not great, and so that opens it up. So if you're already facing an FBI campaign, you're kind of opening yourself up on that. But his political position, I mean, being an anti-fascist in the way that he is, and specifically, I mean, you look at that speech, you could absolutely see how, just a few years later in the McCarthyist period.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah. I mean, it gets to the point where he went to leave Hollywood for London, I believe, for a film premiere, and was banned from re-entering the United States by the Attorney General at the time because he wouldn't submit to an interview about his political views and his moral behavior, quote unquote. So he's like, fuck it, I'm Charlie Chaplin. I have plenty of money. I'm just going to go somewhere else. But then, as sentiment shifts, over time, by 1972, he's back at the Oscars getting an honorary award, and he's a hero.
Well, we've covered the sort of the arc of the breakdown. I mean, by the early 60s of the breakdown of McCarthyism.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a literal defeat of McCarthyism, frankly, by, people like Eisenhower. But there's also within Hollywood sort of the breakdown of McCarthyism and sort of direct attacks on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, he follows this arc. So is there any other sort of last statements we want on this?
On the film itself, I think we've covered it pretty well. I wanted to mention this. I don't really have a good answer for it, but I found it interesting as I was watching this time. I was reminded of comedians who have made films that deal in some way with the World War II experience, specifically often from like the Jewish perspective as well, where you have obviously the most famous one is the film that doesn't exist apparently, or maybe it does, who knows, the Jerry Lewis, The Day the Clown Cried, where it's specifically film comedians who are wanting to make movies about this. Life is Beautiful, Roberto Benigni makes that one. Oscar, beloved Oscar winning movie now. Jojo Rabbit, Taika Waititi's done one. You mentioned Mel Brooks and the producers being kind of adjacent to this. We're like, what is it about comedians who want to go into the most uncomedic kind of story you could possibly do? And on occasion getting gold out of it, like I would say with The Great Dictator. And the producers, to be fair. But
I mean, producers, part of it is that Mel Brooks is a genius, but I think Mel Brooks is directly connected, right? Because the way that you go after fascists is you make fun of them.
Right. And he's, I believe, said almost quote, like word for word, that quote.
I mean, I think there's a Chaplin-esque thing to what all these comedians are trying to do, which is like the closeness of tragedy and comedy.
Sure.
And also sometimes trying to do political satire out of it, which I think is always seen as extreme. But like, yeah, you have to humiliate if you try to show them. Like, part of it is at no point while he's mocking Triumph of the Will does he allow any space for the effectiveness of Triumph of the Will. So this isn't a movie that's going to show you why the Nazis are in power, really, because it's not going to show them in their strength, because the point is to lampoon them.
Right. It's constant ridicule, and that's all you're getting.
And I think he's the best at doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, producers maybe, but also producers isn't directly about the Nazi regime. Because a lot of I like Jojo Rabbit. a lot of these other efforts don't really fly because it's really hard to do.
So I was kind of wondering, maybe that might be the only answer I had to it. Was like, it's probably a really amazing comedic challenge that these directors and these performers, also a lot of them are writer directors too, writer director actors as well. In that case, obviously, Brooks isn't in the producers, but all the other ones like Jerry Lewis is in there, Roberto Benigni's in there, Taika Waititi's in there, Chaplin is in there twice in this particular movie. It's probably a fascinating comedic challenge for them.
Right.
So, but
how many pull it off?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Chaplin would go on to do like 7 years later, Monsieur Verdoux, which I think we will cover at some point in the life of this show. Savage critique there, but yeah, I don't know. Watch it. This Great Dictator is amazing. I think some of the tonal balances that he strikes are fantastic and fascinating, and rings very different in 2025 watching it than it did like in film school or when I first bought like the Criterion on DVD when that came out years ago. Like most things in this series, hits a little different now.
Yeah, like most things. Oh God.
So
I think, as maybe, yeah, probably the most famous movie we've covered in this as part of this series, and maybe I don't want to say the most politically effective because we've had a lot of very politically effective films, but the one that was most directed in it, maybe the most directed in its moment at a particular political purpose, and achieved that, did influence the context.
That's maybe the key to it, like versus the other ones. Like this one did, obviously, like something like Z has like ramifications throughout history, but like in the moment, The Great Dictator is kind of on its own in this list of movies we've been covering.
I mean, it's the only one that's like really popular.
Right. So that's what I mean. So, or to the level that it was compared to,
Right.
I'm not to pick on Robert Kramer because we adore the guy, but like Ice in 1970, like it was a lost movie for a long time. Like it did not come out and get, number 2 at the box office that year and Oscar nominations and everything else. So
you won't watch it on a streamer.
No. So, but would you say The Great Dictator is a leftist film?
No.
Is it that category that we've kind of slowly been realizing a lot of these fall into, where like it's an anti-fascist film that leftists will enjoy, but it's not actually a leftist film?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is that. And I almost want to call it a fellow traveler film.
Oh, that's kind of, I like this idea. Yeah.
Without being an explicitly leftist film.
I like the fellow traveler film application.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe this movie almost more than anything else.
Of this series?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had some, overtly leftist films as well, but
right.
Yeah.
But like the one that rides that ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that final speech, it's like, it's got so much of the feel of like 30s communists subliminating your message to a certain degree, but it's also, I mean, it's such an anti-nationalist speech. It's so, the values are all there, but it's not actually explicit.
Right. And also that speaks to the lasting impact of the film too, where like people are aware of that speech that have not seen the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. And to know when you watch the movie, they're like, that's the climax. You're like, oh, wow. Yeah, perfect. That is the climax. It doesn't really like, okay. So then the first time you saw it, that didn't rob you of the impact of that you knew that speech?
I think it did a little.
A little bit. Okay. I was just curious.
Because I had heard the speech before, but not very much because the structure of the film, I think there's rough points in the structure of the film, but the lead into that is so powerful.
Yeah.
Everything we've seen is so powerful. Everything with the I think that once the invasion begins, the movie jumps into a different gear, and leading into that speech, it's like, fuck, that's filmmaking.
Yeah. Yeah. Sweet. Well, what have we got up in front of us next time, Isaac?
Well, we're gonna have Return of the Secaucus 7 for Christmas.
Yeah, John Sayles, which I don't think we've covered yet.
Have we not covered? We've never done Matewan, which is kind of crazy. We've never done From Another Planet, which is kind of crazy. Like, I mean, John Sayles, man. But like, we're gonna make up for that. We're gonna do a patented post-60s hangover.
Our sweet spot.
Have you seen this before?
I actually have not. I own it, so I'm looking forward to actually breaking the seal and watching that one. But
it's, yeah.
I've seen a bunch of his movies. I don't know why I've skipped this one.
I mean, this is basically a movie about, feels like it's a movie about my parents. So
Yeah,
I'm really excited to talk about it.
absolutely. But before we sign off, be sure to rate and review the show in whatever podcast app you are using. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend or two. And if you love the show and feel so inclined and have the means, we also have a Patreon page set up. Just see all the links in the show notes for any of that information. And until next time, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Isaac, and stay safe out there. Keep fighting keep fighting ICE, keep fighting nation authoritarianism, keep fighting for a free Palestine. And it's getting harder and harder to stay safe out there, but also we can win because they're just a bunch of hinkles out there.
Oh, bella ciao, 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 ciao.